Hello, I'm Carly. I'm 17 now, but this story happened when I was 15. I refused to talk and to eat to get rid of my abusive parents who were poisoning my life. My whole life, my parents were not nice. They forbade me to do almost everything and would scream at me every time they got the chance. When I was 5, I got very sick and feverish. I couldn't even get up from my bed. But my parents thought I was faking it. When they were taking me to the doctor by bus, I was crying, but they told me that I was embarrassing them and that if I didn't stop, they would take me back. So I had to hold back my tears all the way there. When I started school, they wouldn't let me out of my room because they expected me to study all the time and then sleep. On the weekends, my parents would go out and make me stay home and clean the entire house. If I would refuse, they would scream at me and confine me to my room, the same as during the week. They would never let me talk. I had to be as silent as possible. So by the time I was 15, I had no friends at all, simply because I was afraid to talk to anyone. My classmates and even my teachers hated me because they thought I was weird. When I wished happy birthday to Emily, one of the girls from our class, and gave her a necklace I made myself, she laughed at it and threw it in the trash because it was ugly. I took it out of the trash and they continued to laugh at me, calling me a hobo. When a teacher asked me something, I couldn't answer because I was too scared. But they thought I was stupid. Every time I tried to explain my situation at home, they would get angry at me because I was coming up with excuses. So I gave up. I stopped talking at all. No more talking because it made everything worse. I also hoped that maybe someone would notice it and it would help me somehow. Every time a teacher asked me something, I stayed silent. They would get angry but then just forget about it and move on. During breaks, I would sit alone, but people would come to me, trying to test my patience. One guy, Emmett, who would bully me a lot, would shout in my ear as loud as he could, trying to get a reaction from me. But I didn't do anything. Sometimes this guy would even come to my house and throw eggs at my window, or some stuff like that. He really hated me. Emily and her friends would ask me questions, and when I didn't respond, they would physically push me. One day, they were all chewing gum and spat them out in my hair. I noticed it only after a few hours of people laughing at me. I gave myself a very short haircut, and it looked extremely ugly. At some point, they all gave up on me and left me alone because I wasn't reacting. The last one who talked to me was Emmett. He told me maybe if you stood up for yourself, you wouldn't be so pathetic. And finally, all this silence paid off. After numerous complaints, I was sent to the principal. He was asking me questions, but of course I didn't answer. He thought I was mocking him and called my parents. When they came, they were acting all nice and told him I was sick. I mean mentally, and that maybe I needed a month at home to heal and stuff. At this point, I remembered what Emmett said and I finally spoke up. I wanted to tell him everything about how I was abused my whole life, how I was like a slave in my own home and that they hated me. I wanted to speak for the first time in months, but my parents quickly shut me up by telling the principal that I just forgot to take my medication and that I just needed some time at home. The principal didn't care and agreed to let me stay at home. I was devastated. Even when I said something, it didn't help. My parents were screaming at me the whole way home, saying how embarrassed they were to have such a useless and ugly daughter. But I wasn't responding. Before, they didn't even notice that I wasn't talking. But now it got on their nerves. At home, they continued to scream at me, demanding that I start talking. But I didn't. It was a protest and the best thing I could do to annoy them. My mom took my favorite childhood toy, a bunny. Even at 15, I was still sleeping with him. She took him by the head and said, "Talk." I didn't, so she ripped his head off and threw him out the window. I could sew pretty well, so I ran outside to get him back, but my dad blocked my way and then took me to my room. They locked my door, demanding that I start talking, and they took away my phone and my books. I was laying down in an empty room, and the only thing I could do was look out of my window. To not go crazy, I was silently having conversations with myself. I also refused to eat to prove my point. At some point, they put a sandwich into my room. I was ready to bite it, but then I put it back. I decided that I wasn't going to eat. I only drank water occasionally. My parents kept berating and pressuring me, and all I wanted was for them to leave me alone. And I couldn't wait to move out when I turned 18. I even wrote them a letter explaining this, but they refused, thinking I would break. But I knew that sooner or later I would win this and get what I wanted. After a week of this, someone threw a stone at my window. It was Emmett. He was holding a piece of cardboard with "creepy idiot" written on it, and he was smiling. But when he saw me in my state, his smile disappeared and he dropped the cardboard. We looked at each other for a minute, and then he ran away. After a few days, the police came to our house. I don't remember any of it because I was at my limit. I only remember a lot of screaming and weird sounds. I was put in the hospital where I was fed through a tube. Doctors, psychiatrists, and social workers were coming to me, asking me questions. And I finally started speaking and told them everything. It was nice, but I still felt alone. I didn't know what exactly had happened, but I found out soon. One nurse told me a boy, the one who told the police, was coming every day and asking about me. They kept telling him he could visit me, but he always refused. I knew it was Emmett. Sometimes he would bring me chocolate or something like that, or wait for hours at the hospital, but he would never come in to actually see me. After some time, I was put into a foster home for a while, and I was much better and healthier. At some point, I was informed that my parents were put in jail. And you know what? I smiled. I was happy. Maybe it was cruel, but they deserved it. And then things got even better. I was put into another foster home, but it was in another city. I texted Emmett that I was moving away and that I wanted him to visit me while we still had the chance. And he came. We were just chatting outside. He never looked at me in the eye and just stood there holding his hands in his pocket. I asked him why he did what he did, if he hated me. He tried to explain that he never actually hated me, but strangely, he could not finish his sentence and changed the subject. After 20 minutes of us talking, Emmett left. He kind of awkwardly shook my hand. While I was watching him walk away, I was thinking that I didn't want him to leave, and that I finally had at least one reason to stay in this city. But I had to leave. My new foster family in another city was very nice, and I wasn't used to that. So at first, I was very closed off. But after a few months of consistent love and respect, I started to like them. I was trying to hold in my emotions because I knew at some point I had to leave this family and move on. Then, one evening, they asked me to sit down for a serious talk. I was ready to be told that I had to move again, and tried to be unemotional, but then they asked me if I wanted to be adopted by them. I burst into tears for the first time in years. I said yes, and they hugged me. I kept in touch with Emmett. We were chatting almost every day, and I was telling him how happy I was and how grateful I was for him. And then one day, he said he would come to my city to visit me, and I was so happy to hear that. But when he came, he hit me with some terrible news. Both of us were shy, but happy to see each other. I started to realize that Emmett liked me, and I liked him. And he didn't just come to visit. He ran away from home because he was tired of his parents, who were as abusive as mine. And he wanted to start working, and then he wanted me to move in with him. He confessed his love to me, something he wasn't able to do for years. He asked me to run away with him, to ditch school and finally to start living like we wanted to. I I didn't know what to say. I finally had a loving family and friends, so I just shook my head. I asked him to try to finish school and then we could start a life together or something, but instead, Emmett just stood up and left. I was devastated because he disappeared from social media and I don't know where he is or what has happened to him. He probably felt betrayed by me. I will keep on studying and trying to get better so I can have a chance to lead a good life and help Emmett if he appears in my life again.